Beekeepers, January 30th, 2023, mid-Michigan. Another polar vortex. I currently don't have any colonies outside. One of the reasons why I move my colonies around is so I can determine how much honey they have. And during the fall, early winter, I try to downsize the hive as much as possible because I don't want to be carrying big hives around. So when they get clustered, cold temperatures, and if I can remove a bottom deep, I remove a bottom deep. And I want to say this shim here in the center wasn't my idea. It's Better Bee's idea. And then you put your sugar, domino cane sugar, through here. But you gotta make sure that there is a pile of sugar there. If they run out of sugar, I've had colonies, they don't go up the side of the hive to get to the honey or go down to the honey. They lose their transportation network. For some reason, they won't go up to the side of the hive. A lot of them won't. So anyway, when I bring these in, I always set the heavy ones on the bottom because most of them I can't lift up high anyway. So I know the bottom ones have lots of honey. I would never set a light hive on the bottom. I always make sure I find a heavy hive. The ones on top are lighter, of course, and then I go through every so often. I check them. I know this right here is a large colony. They got put on top, and I want to make sure that they don't run out of honey. So I go through and I check them, and I open up the hive. I check, make sure they have sugar, and I'm due to make more sugar this week because they're getting low. And I desperately need more room. That's why I got to build some more rooms in my garage. So let me pause this. This colony here, last time I moved things around, I determined it was too light. So I'm getting ready to bring this one in. I'm going to set it on my hand truck, and I'll show you where I'm going to bring it. Last winter, I didn't know I was going to build this room in the garage, and I thought that I would put more insulation around my hives outside, but that you end up spending money, so it's easier just to bring them in. And again, I make sure the heavy ones are on the bottom. As I've taken some off to check them, and I know which queens are older, and I keep those different locations so I can go through. I want to check those at least once a month. This right here's got a 2020 queen. This one right here has a 2020 queen. I just checked those a few days ago, and I'll show you those papers. Okay, here's my rough notes. These are the colonies that I have inspected inside my bee room and the date I inspected them. And the majority of them are older queens, so I was looking for a queenless colony, and I found one right there. You know, I'm surrounded by crop farmers, and I have some colonies that are having a hard time. And some of them have older queens, and they didn't make enough winter bees, and the bees die quicker up here in Michigan because of all the toxic chemicals. So I go through the small colonies constantly, checking them. And this one right here, this queen right here didn't perform very well for me last summer, but I kept her alive, kept the colony going, and right now it is a very small, it's actually my smallest colony. But they still have a queen. See, that's my smallest colony. The other day, like I showed you here, 91 didn't have a queen. And I didn't know about 99 at the time. So I went ahead and I put that in another small colony. It wasn't quite that small, but sometimes you wish you had saved it for a smaller colony. But I will keep looking for a queenless colony that I can combine with 99. But I made sure they were in the window. They would not survive in the window. It gets cold here. I have hot water floor heat, and I have to maintain temperature warm enough so that I don't have glycol. I don't want my floor to freeze. So my thermostat's over here against my warm wall. So, and it's warm enough in here where I can inspect hives, that I can pull out frames of brood, and I can check them, put them back in. But it's also not too warm that they're going to get active. So when I bring in the hive, this right here is the hive that I just showed you out there in the shed. And when you bring it in from the cold, you want to open it up as soon as possible because the bees will stay clustered. You can go through and you can check. I don't have any, I want to show you this. I don't have any respect for Better Bee and the bee industry in general. Why? And why am I such a prick to other beekeepers that put videos on YouTube? I've actually had, well, I'll show you the papers. Okay, I've shown this in a few of my videos. 2019, I had a bunch of hives here. They were facing south, and 150 yards south of me, there's a field. And the crop farmer was out planting early in the morning on a very windy day. The wind was blowing from the south. And I went away for a couple hours to do an electrical job, and I came back around noon. And I checked my colonies, and bees were coming out of my colonies dying. They were upside on their back like this. I have my videos on my YouTube channel. So I knew that farmer, and I called him, and told him they're killing my bees, and he never came over to apologize. So the next day I called the state of Michigan, and they came out right away, took samples. They acted like they were so concerned. This right here is the inspector or whatever, took samples of my bees, and I told her these were nurse bees. They were in the hive, and the chemicals blew into my hive from the wind blowing them in. And she agreed, yeah, the bees are young nurse bees, and she took samples. And then a month later, they called me and they told me, yep, your bees died from the chemicals that farmer used out there. And then a month after that, here, the poisoning happened in May. So by August, I get this letter, and they're trying to tell me it wasn't windy that day, and the farmer did nothing wrong. They're telling me my bees went over to that field. It's May. The field was completely tilled. They were planting corn. There was nothing in that field for the bees to want to collect. There's no nectar, no pollen. And so they're a bunch of liars. Our government's a bunch of liars. All the way from the president of the United States all the way down to your local township. They're all a bunch of liars. Okay, right now, Russia is battling NATO in Ukraine. Russia has never, ever done anything to the United States. But the United States has funded neo-Nazis, or Nazis. They're not really neo-Nazis. They're Nazis in Ukraine, send a bunch of weapons. They keep sending more weapons, trying to knock Russia down. Russia's not going to lose. So anyway, why I get pissed off that like people like Vinyl Farm trying to act like if you have a different hive, your bees are going to do better. Nobody ever talks about the toxic chemicals. It's the toxic chemicals that are killing your bees, making your bees not live very long. And the reason I have no respect for Better Bee, they've actually told me on the phone that I should be rotating my mite treatments. And they want to have a lot of emphasis on mite treatments to get rid of the row mites. There's nothing in this catalog here about toxic chemicals. Not one single word about toxic chemicals killing your bees. But yet they want you to do all of this stuff here all through the whole year to get rid of row mites. They're not talking one treatment. They're talking several treatments throughout the year. And I added all this up. It's like $50, $60 per colony. How the hell are you going to make any money beekeeping if you're spending $50, $60 per colony? See, they even show a picture here. See how big they are? And you get these people that want to put bees in alcohol or whatever to knock, kill the bees to knock off the row mites. If you take a frame of bees, a brood frame with nurse bees, and you take 5-10 minutes, do it when it's nice and warm, or make sure you have lots of light, you could see the row mites on the bees, all right? And I have no respect for Better Bee. Sometimes I repeat myself a lot, but I'm trying to emphasize the bee industry is making money selling products to you to treat for row mites. But the majority of you, if you're surrounded by crop farmers, the majority of you are going to have trouble with your honeybees because of the toxic chemicals in the environment. I can't afford to change my frames every other year, or even 3 years. Sometimes you're over 5, but I know the toxic chemicals are building up in my hive. It's in the wax, it gets in the pollen, it's in the honey, okay? And it shortens the life of your bees. Bees only live 5 to 6 months during the winter. And if they're dying early because of the toxic chemicals, like last spring didn't come, it didn't warm up until May, and I lost a third of my colonies because I couldn't get them restarted. And that's the other myth. Pollen substitute does not make your queen lay, does not get your colonies to start brood. They have to want to. If they don't want to, it doesn't matter what you put in the hive. You got to consider, majority of all these colonies already have pollen in the hive they brought in last fall. So here, I got the cover off. And right now I have, this right here is the colony that didn't have a queen. And they have a lot of deep frames of honey. And let me pause this. Okay, I pulled out some frames out of this deep right here. This is why it's important to lift up your hives. And this colony right here had brood down at the bottom, and they went up to the medium. I don't know why, but I moved these frames around, I think, and they lost their brood. They probably got demoralized when they lost their queen and gave up on the brood. So anyway, there's several frames of honey right here. If I didn't have these here, I've been going through my medium frames, and I'm getting down to the ones that only have a little bit, and there's a lot of pollen on these, and I really want the ones that have a lot of honey. So I don't have a lot of honey on those mediums. I won't have that until I have another colony that gets combined with another. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to take, I don't want to take this off right now. I'm going to lift this up. I already knew from out there in the shed, see, this is why this is an advantage right here. As long as you keep sugar in there and make sure they can go from here to there, you can open this up. You'll know where the colony is, where the cluster is. You don't have to guess. So I knew the cluster's up here, and they're starting to warm up now. I'm wasting time doing a video, but I'm going to take this medium. I'm going to set it right there on top of the hive cover, and then I'm going to move frames around in the bottom deep. So let me pause. All right, what happened was I didn't lift that high enough. They were clustered underneath, and there's the sugar. So I didn't lift it high enough. My mistake. I do make mistakes. Like, I've been so focused on the colonies that were outside. These colonies in the window, I guess I didn't realize it's been a while since I checked them. And yesterday I noticed there was a colony I couldn't see. And I pulled it out. Sure enough, they ran out of honey. So I do make mistakes. I had a dead out because they simply ran out of honey. And the first thing I did this morning is I went ahead and I checked all of them, and that's where I used up a lot of my honey. I put honey in those. So let me do that, and then move sugar over. And all I got to do is put in like 2 or 3 frames. 2 or 3 of those frames there, and they're good for a while. I don't actually have to pull out all the frames. I just move the sugar over. And let me pause this again. Okay, I pulled out 4 frames. And this right here is the most honey. I think it's even, yeah, so they wouldn't last very long outside with the amount of honey they have. And it's a large colony. It's a little larger than I thought. I guess I didn't see the bees on these frames here on the side. I looked through the center, and I didn't see any bees here. So, I got to make a comment. I don't watch beekeeping videos on YouTube, but when I'm scanning through YouTube and I see the titles of videos, Vinyl Farm with this bee barn nonsense and these super large frames. When you have a colony that's cold, or a cold hive, and you're trying to pull out frames with this propolis, cold, it's not so much trouble during the summer, but when it's cold, it's really hard to get them out. Why would you want a larger frame? I mean, I gotta say, honestly, the biggest idiot on YouTube, the biggest idiot beekeeper is Vinyl Farm. Was it just a couple years ago, he lost almost all of his colonies. And then he's got, a year later, talk like he's some kind of a beekeeping expert, all right? It doesn't make any sense to me. If you lose your colonies, and you're going to come up with all these stupid other ideas, why all of a sudden you're now a perfect beekeeper? And there's nothing wrong with a Langstroth hive. It's very simple to move around when you have a single deep and a medium. Okay, I can pick up most of these very easily. I can probably pick up 100 pounds or so, so maybe they're not as light as I make them appear. But anyway, this is my method, and this is how I minimize my losses. As long as I don't make mistakes and overlook a colony, I keep an eye on them. When a cluster gets really small, I bring it in here. It's in the 50s in here, and the large colonies don't do well in here. They get too warm, they move around to eat their honey. But I have to have it warm enough to keep my floor from freezing and keep these colonies here in the window. These generally, they're smaller colonies. I don't want these colonies to get too cold either. So, okay, that's, I don't really know if I want to look for this queen right now. I've got other things to do. And during the winter, if they don't have a queen, they're not going to roar like they do during the summer. So like that 91 there didn't make any noise whatsoever. And they didn't have a queen. But I think I'm going to leave this one alone. I'm just going to add honey. Okay? Thank you.